G'day and welcome to Not the Farmer's Wife podcast. I'm CJ Steedman and I'm not the farmer's wife, I'm the farmer. I'm also a mum to MJ and OJ and a full-time off-farm worker. And like most farmers, I'm able to farm with the help of my family and my partner, who I call the handy helper. On Mojo Homestead, we grow chickens, goats, cows and bees, and we do it using regenerative agriculture and holistic management practices. If, like me, you love all things farming and homesteading, then we'd love to have you along for the ride. So let's get farming. G'day everyone and welcome to episode 101.
101
of Not the Farmer's Wife podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, the handy helper is here with me. And we have to make a special mention right at the beginning. The handy helper,
because I've been introduced to this and it's really good,
is drinking an Australian lager called Traveller. And he wanted it put on the YouTube thing because Travis Flamel, who is an actor who starred in Vikings and
Black Snow, the newest
Black Snow he's in at the moment in Australia. He's an actor, Australian actor. He used to be a model, I think, many years ago.
Calvin Klein model.
Was he underwear model or something? Was he? And he and his mates have made this beer, and the handy helper likes the beer.
I like it a lot.
He likes it a lot. And he put a thing out saying he wanted to come visit people in rural areas. So the handy helper's trying to get him to come and visit us at Mojo Homestead. So if you know Travis Flamel, if you're Australian and you know him, I think he's got a farm down in Victoria.
Echuca.
Yeah. So if you know him, tell him, that we'd love him to come visit Mojo Homestead. Anyway, enough of that. So you enjoy your beer.
I'm going to.
Helper. So what are we talking about this week? This month, the month of February, which is a crazy, insane, busy month for us because between the two of us, we have 4 children's birthdays in the month of February. It's nuts. So we don't get a spare weekend anywhere. And then we also have the Canberra show at the end of the month, which we always go to because there's livestock. And this year we're hoping to put some of our eggs in.
Maybe even a crazy rooster.
Yeah, we could. The Brahmas?
I want to put the big white Brahma in.
Yeah, we could.
He's handsome.
So we try and put something into the Canberra show each year. We don't always make it each year, but we try to. Anyway, so February's crazy for us. But because of my little bargain that I made with myself about writing a book a month, so the first book is live. If you are a Kindle Unlimited member, go to Kindle, search for Step-by-Step Guide to Raising Chickens for Meat, and it is available on Kindle Unlimited, which means you can get it essentially for free and read it. And if you do read it, please give me a review because reviews are how books like that get out into the ether and more people see them. And that's my goal with this, is to get as many people to see it as possible. It's not to make millions off it, although
a bit more educational than anything on it.
It's very step-by-step. It is a step-by-step guide to raising chickens from day olds all the way through to butchering and freezing and storing them in your freezer or in your freezer or fridge. Anyway, this month is all about raising chickens for eggs, because that's the other thing we do here is raise chickens for eggs. So this week we are going to start it off by talking about never buying eggs again. And people laugh when we say that because they go, but what happens when they go off the lay and you don't have eggs and, all that kind of stuff. When was the last time we were completely out of eggs?
God, I can't remember.
We've
always had eggs.
It's got to have been years.
We've been close.
Yeah.
Where we've only had like 3 or 4 cartons left out of all of our eggs.
3 or 4 cartons of eggs instead of 3 or 4 eggs.
But yeah, we've never really run out. Not for a long time.
We haven't. And look, we are different to most people in that we have 30 odd layers. At the moment, we've got 10 that are just about to start laying. They're just at that age where they're about to start laying. But we have currently we've lost a few Isa Browns in the last couple of weeks because Isa Browns, they don't last. Their lifespan's really short.
They're not real good with the heat either.
So we have lost a couple. So we're probably down to about 20 to 25.
Yeah, I haven't done any count in a while.
Yeah, but we've got another 10 coming up who are Brahmas, who are a heritage breed that we've got a hold of and we're breeding. So we do have a lot more egg producers than most backyard chicken keepers do, but we've never run out. And there's a couple of tricks to that, but we'll talk about that later on.
Get into that, yeah.
But the main thing I wanted to start with was why have eggs? Why grow your own eggs in the backyard? And the main one that I seem to keep hearing time and time again of people is supply chain issues, where they're going to the supermarket and they go to the egg section. Usually it's a chilled section. They go to the egg section in their supermarket, and there's no eggs, or there'll be a sign up saying limit one per
carton,
customer.
yeah.
Where they might. I've got one customer who buys 4 cartons of eggs every week off us. Now, her buying 4 cartons of eggs each week is because her family eat that many eggs.
I think Christmas time she brought 9.
Oh, it was insane. But she was buying for her sister as well. So, yeah. But, we know a lot of people that go through more than a carton of eggs a week. And we go through more than a carton of eggs a week if we're really cranking into it. Sometimes we have to stop ourselves eating eggs in order to supply our customers, which is a real bugger for us because we like eating eggs too. But the supply chain issues have been the real bugbear for people, where they get to the store and they can't buy anything. And, we've been through it, certainly with COVID. I mean, you could relate it to toilet paper, perhaps.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
And we certainly, I don't know about everybody else, but here in southern New South Wales, Canberra region area, during COVID, it was insane. People were almost having punch-ups at the checkout.
One of the biggest supermarket supply chains in ACT or in Canberra, as in Costco, was running out of toilet paper. And they have pallets upon pallets of it.
And they had it limited
and they were
to
running
one
out
per customer, and there were people coming in with a trolley, taking one, and then another family member would have another trolley to take another. And we're talking like a 48-pack of toilet paper. Insane. But supply chain became really, really bad and had some really big issues. So we had that kind of issue happening. Now, we also have some issues here in Australia, and I believe that they're the same in the States, in that there's been a spike in bird flu in commercial egg-laying products.
Hatcheries.
What do you call them?
Hatcheries.
Yeah, but hatcheries are where I don't even know what they call them. Egg producers. Egg producers are having issues because they have had a real spike in bird flu, and the bird flu is either wiping out the stock that they have, or the government have come in some cases, and euthanized a whole bunch of chickens to prevent the spread of the disease.
Bird flu.
Which I've got to be honest, we had it here in Canberra, in northern parts of Canberra. There was some bird flu outbreaks. We're so far away, I don't think it would have caused an issue for us, but we haven't had any issues with our birds. The ones that have killed over from old age, not from any, certainly none of them are ill. So we haven't had an issue with it. But certainly from the perspective of, if you want a regular supply of eggs, the best thing you can do is ditch the store completely and go with growing your own eggs in your own backyard. And there's pluses and minuses to it, like everything. We're going to go through some of the good bits, but just to let you know what the reality is for store-bought eggs. So we've talked about shortages and supply chains. You've also got price increases, which I think you and I both, when I did a bit of research on it, we were both a bit shocked, weren't we?
I was gobsmacked.
Pasture-raised eggs, I went and looked at our local supermarkets, $13 to $14 for a dozen pasture-raised eggs.
I think the most expensive I've seen was $15.
Yeah.
$15 for a dozen eggs.
Considering what it costs to produce eggs,
I can't work it
insane. And the real bugbear for me in this one is that the farmers aren't making the money on this. Farmers aren't getting paid that kind of money to produce eggs. Egg supplying is a dialed in product. You don't make much money. It's like milk. If you work out what they get paid per litre, what a farmer gets paid per litre, it's nothing. It's honestly, I don't know how. Well, that's why so many dairies are going out of business, because they're not getting paid enough to actually run a business. The person getting the money is the middleman, is the supermarket. They're the ones that are earning. They'll dictate what they pay to the supplier, to the farmer. And farming is one of those lovely industries where you pay for freight in and out.
Yeah.
Not just one. You're paying to get everything brought to your farm to produce the items you're producing, and then you have to pay the freight to get it to the supermarket as well. It's insane.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a weird situation with supermarkets. They'll buy your
They-
product, but you have to pay the freight to get it there.
And then they dictate how much they're going to pay you for that product. You can't
Yeah.
dictate the price to them. And then they mark it up to whatever they want. And it makes it look like there's all these egg producers out there who are getting top dollar for their eggs.
No, they're getting jack shit.
They're getting nothing.
Mm.
So that's a big issue. Bird flu obviously is a big issue. But also too, I was reading that the changes with government legislation to move away from caged egg production has caused you really enjoy
That's
that.
good.
Yeah. The move away from caged egg production is really changing the supply.
It is.
Because like everything, when you're mass producing food, the cheapest, quickest, easiest way to do it.
That was a mouthful.
Yeah, I know. I could have really fucked that up. Doing it that way, is going to make it a cheap supply chain, but not ethical supply chain. So a lot of people have moved away from the unethical and moved towards ethical, but ethical isn't always cheap. Ethical sometimes is dearer. So yeah, store-bought eggs are not as fresh. We're going to talk about that later because you've got a little bit of a story on that one, haven't you?
Yep.
But commercial eggs can, when you buy them in the store, they can be up to 2 months old. It can be a month from the package date before they before they're like, you can have a month between when they're laid and when they're packaged, and then you've got to have a month that they can only be displayed for a month. So they can be up to 2 months old. Now, that being said, we eat eggs that are 3 months old and we have not had a problem with them. So age isn't always the problem. What is the problem is that the commercial eggs have been washed. And when you wash an egg, you wash the bloom off it. The bloom is the coating that the chook puts on the outside of the egg to protect the eggshell. And it's a thin layer. It's like a membrane kind of substance. And it goes on the outside of the egg, and that protects bacteria and things getting into the eggs. Yep. And that's why farm fresh eggs stay farm fresh for so much longer. If you don't wash the bloom off, the egg will last a lot longer. And we don't refrigerate our eggs. We we shelf keep them. They are at room temperature. Now, if it's particularly hot, you don't want them sitting in the sun, but you don't have to put them in the fridge.
You don't have to put them in the fridge.
No.
No. But once you put them in the fridge, they're going to stay in the fridge. Stay
in the fridge once they're in the fridge. And once you wash the bloom off them, they have to stay in the fridge.
Yeah.
Because that's when things can get in and can affect them, and you need to keep them at that set temperature. So that's a little bit on commercial eggs for you. And also a lot of people are steering away from food that has had a lot of additives put into it. And I've discussed here before, Bovea 10, the supplement that's been given to feedlot cattle to prevent methane in their stomachs, in their rumen. But a lot of people are trying to steer clear of antibiotic-fed animals. And unfortunately, when you've got 1,000 birds in a very small space, you have to supplement the feed. You can't risk an animal getting sick and passing it on to everybody else. Whereas in a pasteurized environment, in a smaller production kind of system like what we do, you really can afford to not pump them full of antibiotics. I mean, like I've said before, we only medicate our chicks we medicate them from day olds. They have medicated chick starter, which is against, and I can never say it because it always sounds like I'm saying coccidiosis or something like that it's called. It's a parasite bug that lives in their stomach. Now, they develop an immunity to it as they become an adult, but when they're chicks, it can kill them. So we medicate from day old until 3 weeks for our meat birds and 6 weeks for our egg layers. And then they go to unmedicated food. We don't feed any kind of antibiotic or medication to our animals.
High protein.
Because we're on a closed farm system. We have a limited number of stock. We have nobody coming in from another bird producer into ours. No. Anything that comes in from another farm gets quarantined before it goes anywhere near anything else. So we don't have the need to antibiotic them. No. But a lot of people are trying to get away from food that is full of antibiotics these days. So having pasture-raised eggs that you've grown yourself means, especially in that smaller environment, it means that you can stay away from antibiotics and you can stay away from medicated feeds because you don't have the same level of risk that the big commercial producers have.
No, you don't.
Yeah. So we're going to now talk about a few things. The benefits of keeping. I've got a little list here because I can never remember what I want to talk about, and I go off on a tangent,
Okay,
especially when the handy helpers here. I go off on a tangent because we start talking about shit that, you know. But we're going to go through the main benefits of having chickens to supply eggs for your family. And the first one is never running out of eggs, even during shortages. We have never run out, and I think, we're looking. If you're a backyard grower and you have between 3 and 5 hens, you more than likely will be getting 3 to 5 eggs a day, 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Yeah. Now, you'll go through patches where they're in their molt, and they don't all molt exactly at the same time. So you might have 2 or 3 girls that are still laying and a couple that have stopped laying because they're going through their molt period. Their molt is like a renewing of their energy is probably the best way of putting it. That sounds very woo-woo, but you know what I mean.
What it is a big freaking mess.
It's a big freaking mess as far as feathers go.
You walk out of a morning thinking that there's been a fox in there because there's feathers everywhere. But no, we're just molting.
There's feathers everywhere. They lose all their feathers, or not lose all their feathers, but they lose a big chunk of their feathers and they regrow feathers, and they stop laying eggs for probably about 2 to 3 weeks, depending. Some, as they get older, that molt period can stretch out to be 4 to 5 weeks. But they stop laying for a little while, and it just gives their body a chance to kind of boost back up again.
Yep.
And it's a good opportunity to worm them. It's a good opportunity to give them a boost of vitamins.
Yep.
You can buy supplements like a mash that you make up that has different things in it that'll help with their gut.
I think our last lot, they only malted for about 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was
and
really
they were back
quick.
on the lay again.
And it was really quick.
Yeah, they were really good.
And it comes down to usually happening in the middle of winter. Now, we've got a couple that are molting at the moment. In the middle of summer, but the really excessive heat that we're having here can also knock them about in that respect. So you have a molt period, a couple go off the lay, but usually they stagger it, so you're not losing all your egg production. Yep. But I've never had anybody say, oh, my God, during the molt, I ran out of eggs completely. I have seen things.
See, like molting. Look at them.
See, this is why we go forever, because you get distracted.
I can't help it.
We have, now I've lost my train of thought. We have had people say, like I've seen pictures on Facebook and TikTok and all that shit where they say, hang a sign around the chook's neck saying, I'm a freeloader, so mum had to buy store-bought eggs, that kind of thing. We've not ever had that. So I can't sympathise with those people because I just don't understand that. Now, there is also, and we'll talk about later on, there are also ways of preserving eggs when you have gluts of eggs, and you will have gluts where you have more eggs than you can cope with. There are ways of preserving them so that when you do have a molt period, if you need to use more than usual amounts of eggs, you can always have some that are stored. We'll discuss that later. Yep. Now, you've got a little story about the freshness of our pasture-raised eggs versus
the freshness of the eggs. I always thought our eggs were pretty good with when we cooked them up and did things like that. But I took a dozen eggs one day into work for a barbecue for a Sunday morning breakfast at work. And we have a lot of staff and they do that. We do it in groups all over the place. And a couple of guys come down when I was cooking on the barbecue and I cracked my eggs on the barbecue and they just sat there like no egg ring. They just sit there because they're so fresh. Yeah. And then other guys were cracking their eggs and they were running all over the plate. And no one could work out why my eggs would just stay in the one spot. Because they were laid the day before. And
Joel Salatin, I've actually heard him talk about it. They were just so
fresh.
That he had a buyer who wanted to buy eggs of him, and when he was first trying to sell them.
The restaurant guy.
And the restaurant guy. And he talked about, he took the eggs in and he said to the restaurant guy, Test these eggs, poach them, and see what you think. And so he dropped the egg into a pot of boiling water, and the white of the egg stayed around the egg.
And
he was stirring it, and he was looking, going, holy crap, where do you get these eggs? Like, I want like 40 of these a day. And Joel Salatin was like, oh my God, I have to work out how I'm going to do that. And he said literally he bit off more than he could chew and then chewed like crazy to supply this guy with eggs.
He did.
But the egg, because they're so fresh and because they're so healthy, the white will stay.
The white's like jelly.
Really close around the yolk.
Yeah.
Instead of having that effect where you crack it on the hot plate and it just splatters.
And I think a lot of that has to do with eggs being washed and being refrigerated and stuff like that. Some of them are just And
I think it also comes down to our last point on this subject is that it's their diet. If you have pasture-raised eggs, and we'll talk about it with nutrition as well, pasture-raised eggs, they have such a varied diet because they have access to bugs and grubs and mice and all the things that they would have in the wild. I know that sounds weird because you don't think of chickens as living in the wild, but they're a bird still, and the closest thing to dinosaurs. Technically, they're an animal that would live in a wild environment, and the access that they have to food in a pasture-raised environment is very similar to their natural diet. And I think that does it.
People get confused with chickens as well with what you can feed them, I think.
Vegetarian pellets?
Vegetarian pellets, yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Don't feed vegetarian pellets. Whatever you do, don't feed vegetarian pellets.
And chickens will absolutely devour meat.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. We've seen videos of people putting carcasses.
It sounds really crook, but if you put a chicken carcass in there, they'll devour it.
Gotcha.
They'll pick it to pieces.
Why would they? There's nutrients on it. Why would they not take it?
Yeah, they do.
Anyway, we're going to keep going because otherwise we'll get waylaid. Cost savings, I'm going to just discuss briefly cost savings because I have sat down and worked it out, and I think we worked it out that it was 30 cents an egg.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was just on 30 cents or just under.
Is what I worked out that it costs us. Now, that isn't taking into account the initial setup. And you have a rough, you can talk a little bit about a rough setup, can't you? What it costs.
What it costs basically to set up a chicken yard. You can get so many different things with secondhand timber and bits and pieces like that to make it cheaper. Sometimes you can get good rolls of secondhand chicken wire, which is good. Yeah. Sometimes it's not worth it. It's worth just to go and buy new stuff. Bits and pieces, electric fences if you want to go bigger. There's a special poultry fence. Which is a lot smaller grade than an animal one.
Thunderbird is the brand.
Thunderbird's the brand that does that. They're really good, but you can spend. It depends on what you want to do. You can do it as cheap as possible.
Our first chicken coop was an old shed frame.
It was a carport
that you put corrugated iron and fencing wire on the outside of, didn't you?
Yes, it was a single car carport, and that's what I built it out of.
So that was our first one.
It just it can vary. You can go all out if you want. If you're looking long term, sometimes it might pay to go with some new stuff, but I think to get started straight up, go to a second-hand shop.
Yeah.
Go to second-hand builder supplies, get timber and bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Rolls of fence and wire.
It doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be the Taj Mahal chicken palace, like I would love to.
The only thing I do say is obviously it's different with us because we're on a property.
Yeah.
And the chooks free range, but we also have an extra benefit here with the chooks free ranging. We have a Merima in the yard as well.
So we don't have to worry about predators.
We don't have to worry about predators. And it's surprisingly enough, I think a lot of the time I hear of people like foxes taking chickens, it's in residential areas.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
So if you're going to build a chicken coop, I'd say try and build something that has a roof on it.
Yep.
Because the little bastards can climb, let me tell you.
Predator
proof and stuff like that. So you want pretty high fencing and possibly get a roof on it.
But as far as costs go for day-to-day costs, I think it's $22 for a bag of chicken feed.
Yeah.
And we go through 3 a week.
Probably about 3 a week, but we got a hell of a lot of chooks too.
So we haven't done the head count recently, but just say we've got 20 to make it bare minimum, 20 plus 2 roosters in the main layers yard. Yep. And we have another 12 in our Brahma's yard. And we're going through 3 bags a week.
Yeah.
So it doesn't cost a lot. Now we do give chicken scraps, and people will talk about don't feed them this, don't feed them that. We'll talk about nutrition, but honestly, there are so many things that people have said to me over the years. Don't feed them that. You
can't feed chicken that.
And then the kids have put something in a scrap bucket. It's gone out. I've gone, shit, an avocado skin. We're not supposed to feed that to chickens. chickens have devoured it without a problem, or the chickens just leave it and don't eat
Yeah,
it,
they don't eat
and
it.
it just ends up as compost on the
Yeah,
ground.
they don't eat
So
it.
yeah, but we worked it out: 60 cents an egg if you don't factor in the massive big cost at the beginning. But that 60 cents an egg was factoring in my time, so that was factoring in my time of each day going and feeding chooks. One of us does it, so sometimes we go and do it together. If I've got something on or he's got something on, one of us will go and do it, but it really doesn't take much time. We do the water probably every 3 days, and the chicken collection, and probably once a week we clean the entire shed out and move it onto fresh pasture. So that can be a bit time consuming.
A week, 2 weeks, depending on the grass.
We factored in that time to that cost, and it worked out to be 60 cents an egg. So compared to 13, even if you go the lowest, $13 for a 12 pasture raised eggs, that just does my head in. That's like more than $1 an egg, which is nuts. Now you can supplement their feed by growing things. So if you have an area that you can fence off or segregate them, you can start by growing like microgreens or something like that in the ground, and then allow them to come in and forage. And that is a super good way of doing it. Another way of doing it, and we've discussed putting a few toys in their yard. So having toys that are things like hanging corn from something where they have to go and pick at it, and the corn keeps moving, but they have to go and work at it and peck at it. And it just gives them that foraging feel, which is really good for them as far as their natural state. Now, the next one I wanted to talk about, now food security and self-sufficiency. We just want to briefly touch on supply chains. And believe it or not, the handy helper used to work in logistics many years ago. Yeah.
Obviously the supermarkets and stuff like that, supply chains for your eggs and bits and pieces. It's something that can be let down really quick if something goes wrong, and then it backs up everywhere. And everyone's seen it just recently with eggs on shelves. I think it went from everywhere, from Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney. They were running out of eggs everywhere, and things like that. What it comes down to, it's not the supplier that's the problem. It's the people in the middle, which is the hard bit. Like I hate saying it, Coles, Woolworths, Audis, people like that. It only takes one drop in the link, and it's done. If the people in the distribution centres, we have a massive one near us here in Goulburn, big Coles one, which I used to deliver to all the time, and take stuff in and out of. If they go on strike, nothing moves.
That's it. It stops.
And recently, the big Woolworths one in Melbourne went on strike, and nothing was moving.
And Woolworths,
and that's where you're getting no eggs, you're getting no dunny paper, no nothing.
Southern New South Wales, Victoria.
We copped it here.
Going into Woolworths, and we try not to shop. We spread it around, but we try not to shop as much as possible at the supermarkets. But we, obviously,
sometimes you have to. Yeah.
And we went into Woolworths, and because I don't go in there all the time, we went in there, and I said to you,
the place was empty.
Like, seriously, what is going on with these shelves? Because everywhere, every aisle we walked down, there was just rows of
empty shelves
that was empty.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. Like, I hadn't seen it coming because I hadn't been in there for so long.
They were all on strike.
And I said to somebody, what's with the shelves? And they said, oh, because the supply
all
guys,
the packers are on strike.
So it just cut the supply chain completely.
When you consider like places like Woolworths and Coles and stuff, they probably get on average 3 semi-trailer loads a week of supplies.
Yeah.
And they were getting nothing for like 3 weeks.
So
it was busting everyone.
Now that means that for us, for you as a backyard, say, chicken keeper, it means that you can wipe out all the middlemen and just have your supply chain as your backyard, because you really don't need that bigger backyard to have chickens. And I think we've discussed it. Canberra backyards have gotten smaller and smaller, and certainly the lady that we got the Brahmas off, they're in a normal household backyard, and they have anywhere between 5 and probably 10.
Oh, they do, don't they?
At any one time. And no problems at all. The neighbours don't mind. Neighbours don't have a problem with it. Legally, they're allowed to do it, but you do need to check. And I know some of our listeners are in the US. You do need to check, because I believe you guys have homeowner associations that can be very, very strict. So I feel sorry for you, because that sounds terrible. I couldn't imagine somebody telling me what I couldn't do in my backyard. But depending on what area you live in, you have to find out your
You got to
local
abide by the rules.
legislation.
Yeah.
And honestly, the easiest way to get around that with neighbours is to go and chat with them and say, look, thinking about getting chickens, is that going to be a problem for you? Like, is it really going to be a problem for you? Because if it's not going to be a problem for you, there might be a 6-pack of eggs in it for you each week.
Yeah.
You know, like, or I'll swap you because you have a lovely veggie garden. You give me some zucchini and I'll give you a 6-pack of eggs. Believe me, they'll appreciate the free range eggs. Now, the other thing I was going to talk about was security as far as storage options. And we have previously lime glassed eggs, which is where you mix, and I can never say it's calcium carbonate or calcium caltrate or something like that. It's a chemical, and it's powdered chemical, it's white. You mix it with water, and then you lower your eggs into it. Now, they have to be fresh, unwashed eggs, and they can keep supposedly anywhere up to 2 years. Now, we forgot about ours. We put them in and literally forgot that we had them because we had so many eggs coming in.
They're in the back of the storeroom.
Yeah, they're in the back.
And we completely forgot.
Big containers, the big plastic tubs of rice and
flour and all that sort of stuff.
And the eggs were sitting at the bottom, and I just completely forgot about them. So they're actually 18 months old. And we got a couple out the other day and cracked them because we thought, that was longer than we'd intended to keep them for. I was going to try them at the 6-month mark and then at the 12-month mark. Anyway, 18 months, we cracked them. The yolks completely fell apart. There was no smell. They didn't look bad. The texture was fine. Yeah. It was just that the yolk hadn't held together. So we fed them to the dogs and waited and said to poor little brown dog, Kelpie, Roxy, darling, if you feel sick, come and tell us. And she scoffed her milk and egg and was none the worse for wear for it. And Luna was the same. So these eggs, well, I don't think that the handy helper and I really want to try them ourselves. Certainly the dogs are enjoying them, and we will get through them, and I will store some more and lime glass them, and then I will try them again at the 6-month and the 12-month mark.
I reckon that'd be good still. 6-month mark.
I'm sure they will be. I might even try them at the 3-month mark, and I'll video it. And then
there was no smell. There was no smell at all.
Yeah, the eggs are definitely not bad. They're just not as appealing to look at because the yolk has.
The float test, they all still same.
They all still, yeah, they were fine.
Nothing floated. Yeah.
So you can also freeze them. You can also dehydrate them. You know, lifelong goal of mine to have a freeze dryer that I can freeze dry milk and eggs and things. Anyway, nutrition. We're going to keep going because otherwise we'll go over. Nutrition. I did some research on this. Pasture raised, which is what your backyard chicken eggs would be if you had chickens in your backyard. They would be pasture raised because your chickens would have access to a whole bunch of stuff that they just don't have in a barn situation. They are higher in vitamin A, vitamin E, and omega-3s straight off the bat. No competition in it. Barn-laid eggs don't have those vitamins in that high quantity. And the reason for it is because pasture-raised chickens have access to bugs, lots of different weeds and plants, mice, field mice, things like that. So their diet is so varied and so much closer to what they're supposed to have a diet of that their eggs, as a result, are way more nutritious. The added bonus we also talked about was if you're not medicating, if you're not giving antibiotics or any kind of medicated feed, then you know that the eggs aren't coming out with any kind of trace chemicals in them from any of those things. Now, for some people, that wouldn't be an issue. And believe me, I'm not dissing on it. There is a time and a place for medicating and antibiotics. I have no problem at all with that. When you are feeding the masses and you have 1,000 birds to look after, antibiotics all the way, because one bird gets sick and the whole lot will go down.
Yep, you're done.
But in a small environment where you don't need to medicate, if that's your preference, man, go for it. Because we don't medicate and we don't have a problem with it.
We don't have any issues.
We don't even. I've actually got to go and find out what to give the booster shots for the goats, because I'm selling 2 goats for the first time as pets, as wethers, instead of for meat. And so I have to go and find out what to give them as far as booster shots to make sure that they won't get sick, because they're moving to a farm away from us. And I don't want them to get sick from the new owners. So I'm trying to work that out now. Now, they're never going to be eating those 2. So whatever I medicate them with is not an issue because nobody's going to consume it.
Which is lucky because they're too damn cute.
They are very cute. And the owner would be mortified if I suggested eating them, even though I would say, well, we would just eat ours anyway. I mean, I look at Cartman, our fattest our fattest milking goat baby, and I look at him and just think, oh God, goat curry, bring it on.
in the smoker.
Now you're going to have a chat for the people because this is your thing. What's the benefit of having chickens in your backyard garden? In your garden area?
Pest control, big time. Obviously, if you're letting your chooks free range in your backyard, once they get used to their environment, stuff like that, garden beds, bits and pieces like that, they get rid of all the bugs and
the yucky
stuff,
bugs.
all the yucky bugs.
What are those white lawn?
Oh, scarab bugs.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they love them. Scarab bugs, things like that. If you've got fruit trees in your backyard, coddling moth that you get with fruit trees, they go absolutely burko over it. Bits and pieces like that, little bugs, ticks, weeds, they get into all that sort of stuff.
They made a huge difference with the coddling moth.
They did. Our fruit trees that we used to have, I actually moved their chicken coop into the orchard.
Yes.
So they had free range in the orchard.
Yeah.
And they cleaned them up, and the fruit trees went berserk.
The trees were big enough that they weren't going to hurt them. Yeah.
Yep, they went berserk in there.
And there's the added bonus of when they're walking around on the garden beds. What are they doing?
Oh, they're pooping. They're pooping. It's the best natural fertilizer ever. High nitrate, stuff like that. And just roll it in with the dirt, and it's really good for the ground.
Well, we don't even have to roll it in with the dirt because
you don't have to. You don't have to roll it in with the dirt because the little bastards ferret like you wouldn't believe. We have a couple that get into our big compost pile. We have a fairly large compost pile. And they get in there, and sometimes you'll look and you'll think there's rabbits in the compost pile, but there's not. The chooks would dig holes down through the compost pile just to get right down in the bottom of it.
But I have said to you before, did you turn over the compost?
No.
And
no, they throw this shit everywhere, they do.
Shoveled it over, and it was the chooks that all decided to dig in the one spot and kicked.
They just kicked it all over to the outside.
Basically turned over our compost for us. So
it's great. With soil aeration and stuff like that, especially in gardens, they go berserk in gardens.
There was something about you can get frames now to put over your garden beds, can't you? Because you don't want them free ranging through your whole garden bed if you've got things still growing.
You can buy like a
is it a net?
It's like a net, like a netting style thing. That you could peg out around your garden beds. So if you don't want them in a garden bed, you can sort of single them off into one area. And their chooks it's weird. They go burko on the ground, digging and ferreting, but they're lazy and they won't jump. They won't. If they're on something good, they will stay there.
Fly over anything. One is called Agnes. She is our matriarch. She's the oldest chicken.
She's the oldest chicken we have.
And her
nothing can hold her back.
And she stays in the yard purely by choice. Her daughter, who is goat chicken, who's currently sitting on eggs.
Sitting on a dozen eggs.
She's a great mum, this one. She's hatched out before, and so she went clucky, and we have whacked a whole bunch of eggs under her, and we've got her sitting because there's no point fighting her. She will just go and ferret away somewhere and sit.
Well, she went and hid. She went and hid again.
Don't hunt and find her. We thought she'd got taken by a fox again. Anyway, we found her. She's on 12 eggs. Keep posted on the social medias because I will update that. But she won't be contained by fences either. No. But they're the only two really. The white chickens won't. We've got two white chickens that fly in and out, but they'll take themselves back into bed and then fly back out when they're done.
Yeah, one does.
But they're good in the garden. Yeah. If you can contain them to a garden bed, they will dig it up for you. They'll aerate. They'll drop all their shit in there, which means you don't have to fertilise as much. Yeah. And they'll get rid of all the nasty bugs out of there, and they'll even eat the weeds as well.
They certainly do.
So the next one we want to talk about was family involvement, and this one is, we can speak from experience on this because we're a blended family. For those that don't know that, we are a blended family. We have 5 children between the two of us. And one of those is an adult and doesn't ever get asked to do chicken duty. She's busy with her own baby. But we have 4 other children who get asked to help with chicken duties. Mm-hmm. And they're all teenagers. So you could imagine that teenagers kind of do this one and tell you where to shove it, and they're not interested in helping. And they don't. They actually love helping. They loved helping from when they were little, and they still love helping. Certainly MJ and OJ, who are here all the time, they will go out and do the chickens for me. They struggled a little bit with a couple of the roosters because OJ will walk up and pick up the hens and try and hug them, and the roosters come over and get all protective with the hens. And so we laugh about it, that a couple of times he's been chased by the roosters.
Yep.
But the roosters have never had a go at him. They've just chased him to make him put the girls down. But they go and feed them. They don't have a problem with collecting the eggs.
No.
They love collecting the eggs. For us, certainly when I was recovering from my knee surgery, having the kids being able to do those chores made a huge difference to us. So don't think that you can't involve your children in it. There's definitely, I think children get so much out of having chores that make them responsible for an animal.
Yeah.
Same as if it was a pet dog or a pet cat that they had to feed, walk, change the kitty litter, pick up the poop in the backyard, anything like that. Yeah, they're boring chores to a degree, but it also teaches the children responsibility for a living animal.
Yeah.
Which I think, and I know in the States they have that 4-H, I think it's called, where the kids at school level will take an animal and they raise it themselves, and then they take it all the way through to show, and then they take it all the way through to sale, to slaughter. And some people freak right out about it, but honestly, those kids grow up with such a great knowledge of how to care for another living being.
Yep.
I take my hat off to the parents that do it, because I wish we had it here in Australia, but we don't. Now, we do have some chickens with personality, and people think that chickens aren't like dogs or cats.
Bullshit. They are. They're bloody rat bags.
Can I just say too, I grew up with a phobia of birds. I know that sounds weird now that I'm a chicken manager, but I grew up with a phobia of birds. So I have overcome my phobia of birds. However, somebody loves birds in a way that I will never fathom. What about goat chicken?
Goat chicken. Oh my God. Well, she gets a name, obviously. People would know, because we've spoke about it before, because she can't be contained.
Yeah.
I don't live with other chickens. I'd rather live with the goats and sleep in the goat shed with the goats. So she got goat chicken. She's also the chicken union rep.
So tells us whenever there's a
tell
problem.
us anything that there's a problem. If we sleep in of a morning, she'll let us know, because she comes and taps on the French door windows, on the glass windows, doors outside,
and then squawks really loudly.
But she's a silk, and she does have a personality. If you walk outside and you say good morning, goat chicken, she talks to you
and follows you around.
Or sometimes I pick her up and I walk around with her and talk to her while I'm doing stuff. And I know I'm a Fruit Loop.
Chickens,
they do have personalities. We had one prior to her, Red Bull we called her. She acted like she just downed a can of Red Bull all the time. She was full on in your face.
That were just like fully wired and going everywhere.
And but if I ignored her, she used to come up and peck me feet.
Peck the back of your feet.
Yeah, she'd peck me on the ankle until I turned around and picked her up. Yeah, Red Bull.
So sustainability and waste production. Another good reason to have backyard chickens. And it's really ironic, because I ended up choosing the name for my second book already. And the book is called Eggs Without Cartons. And the reason I named it that is because when you are growing them in your backyard, you don't need to have a carton. We store ours in cartons because we're selling them. But if I was just producing enough eggs just for my family, I would have one of those awesome, go look on Temu, people, awesome whirly jiggers where you feed the eggs in at the top and they roll down this metal frame that goes circular around a pole, and you take the oldest egg off the bottom. I would have one of those on my bed.
I've seen them. They look pretty cool.
If I didn't have to keep them in cartons to sell to other people.
Yeah.
And I may well get one. So then I can do that. But you don't need to have cartons if you're growing your own eggs. You can just store them in whatever container, in a basket, in a bowl, whatever you like. I always recommend dating them, because you will lose track of which ones are which.
Yep.
So we just use a pencil and we write the date on them, just the day and the month. And so, the book is called Eggs Without Cartons for that very reason, because you don't need them. So there's a lot of sustainability factors in having your own backyard chickens, from the perspective of not buying things from the store, not having packaging, things like that. But also too, you're utilising all of your kitchen scraps to go to chickens. So that means your compost is much better. You're also getting nutrient-rich poo off your chickens to put it back into your garden. So you're kind of closing that whole cycle. And even down to your chicken egg shells, I used to dry them right out, and now I just crush them and put them in the compost because I don't have time for it. But I used to dry them right out and blend them up and crush them and feed them back to the chickens. Because it's a really good rich source of calcium for them to help them have those really strong shell
Makes the egg shells strong.
Yeah, it makes the shells really strong. So definitely a sustainability big tick for that one, if that is something for you. Now, the other thing is flexibility on your egg production. And we have discussed this before that, we're on a big property. We have lots of chickens. But if you are just in a backyard, you can have between 3 and 5 chickens and be still producing more than enough eggs.
Oh, easy.
We have discussed, and I was going to get you just to touch on Isa Browns versus Heritage.
Yeah, Isa Browns, they're a good chook, but they pump the eggs out quick, but they don't last.
No.
They're not a stayer. Not when you've got heritage birds and stuff like that. Heritage will just pump eggs out forever and just keep going. But the Isa Browns, they sort of run out of puff after a couple of years.
Schlop girls out there that are 4 years old.
Yeah,
at least 4 years old.
They still pump the eggs out. They're good. And same with the Aracans. They just keep going. Like I said, Agnes, our matriarch, is an Aracan. Yeah, she's 7 years old. She's still pumping eggs out.
She'll be 8 this year.
Yeah.
And she still lays eggs occasionally.
And still the boss. The boss.
Yeah, the roosters around. So depending on which breed you choose, you can either, and it's a completely personal preference. I will talk about breeds. I think next week I'm talking about breeds. So it is a personal preference, but Isa Browns are quick mass egg production. Really, that's what the commercial places use. And that is a great way to get a mass amount of eggs. If you are feeding lots of people, go the Isa Browns, no problem at all. If you would rather a bird that's a dual purpose bird, meat and eggs, then go the Heritage. You're
just a lot bigger bird.
The Isa Browns, there's not enough meat on them.
No, there's nothing. They're like a budgie. No. There's nothing in them.
So definitely go the Heritage if you want the dual purpose. Yeah. But also too, if you want a bird, if you know that this is the right decision for you, and in 6 years' time you hope to still have the same girls laying eggs, then I would say go Heritage.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like we say, Agnes is be 8 this year and she still lays eggs occasionally. Yep. Now she doesn't lay as much as the other girls.
She doesn't have to.
We're okay with that. She's given us a really good run. I've got no problem feeding her until the end of her days. We're not a commercial producer. We don't need to be watching every dollar that we spend on chicken feed. But she, like I say, she still produces eggs. So, yeah. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is if you go overboard and you get 5 or 6 chooks and then all of a sudden you're inundated with eggs and you think, shit, what do I do? I've got too many. What do I do now? That is the time to go and speak to your neighbours. Speak to family. If somebody else is growing something in their backyard, say to them, I will swap you every week a kilo of tomatoes for a carton of eggs. How's that sound? And make a deal with them to do it. It will encourage them to keep gardening and keep producing whatever you need. But it also encourages you to keep your girls going and keep them healthy and know that you've got a carton of eggs going to a neighbour, a friend, a family member down the track, that you're going to swap for something that you want that you would normally be buying at the supermarket. So it's a win-win for everybody.
It is. Really. Yeah, it is.
Now, community and food production, going on from that neighbourhood thing, it's a really good opportunity to get on board with your neighbours. And if there's a community garden nearby or something like that, maybe go down there and say to them, look, if there's somebody that's growing X, Y, or Z, I have a carton of eggs extra each week. Would you like to do a swap?
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody.
Most people jump at it.
Yeah, most people.
They will. Fresh eggs.
Fresh eggs. I'm in. Pick me. How's the saying go? I know what I've got. Don't lowball me.
Yeah, I know what I've got. Don't lowball me.
I've got fresh eggs, man. But we also have had a few times where, because we're on a lot of Facebook pages that involve chicken raising, because it's a learning cycle for us. We know a hell of a lot about raising chickens. There's always more to learn. There's always something new to learn. So we're both on some Facebook pages, and we've become aware of some things that we need not do. Right, Handy Helper?
I get barred all the time. I can't help it. People ask stupid comments and I give them really stupid answers back, and some people don't like it and get offended, and And then it ends up in a big argument, and I just, see ya.
And as
I'm gone.
as an educator of people raising chickens, can I just say there are no stupid questions. Ask the questions. Ignore people like the handy helper who give smart ass results back. But there's no stupid questions. Seriously, I've had people say, oh, I've got a hen that's gone clucky and she's sitting on eggs, and straight away you go, do you have a rooster? And they go, no.
There's no point.
But the eggs will be fertile, won't they? Because she's sitting on them. And it's like, no, you do realise that you need a rooster to make fertile eggs. So unless you had a rooster, and chickens, fun fact for people out there, chickens are really clever. Hens can retain the sperm of a rooster for up to 30 days. So if you had a rooster in with your hens in the last 30 days, potentially those eggs could
still be fertile. Yeah.
But if you've never had a rooster, they're not going to be fertile. But people carry on and say, oh, silly question, blah, blah, blah. There's no silly questions. Ask the question. And people should be nice to others.
Some people sometimes don't like the answer you give them, but too. So
yeah, well,
that's the hard bit.
There's that too.
We're not experts. It's only most of the things that we know we've learned through trial and error, and
that's why
a lot of people come back with the same problem. Especially with chickens that get egg bound and things like that.
Yeah.
How many times have we sat with a chicken with its ass parked in a bucket of warm water to get an egg out,
and not had any luck?
Egg-bound
chickens are really hard to fix, people.
Mm.
You have to have patience. You have to be prepared for the worst. We've never successfully brought a chook back from egg-bound.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And we've had a few, and we've tried everything, including sticking my glove finger, olive oiled, up a chook's vent to try and get the egg out. It's not pleasant, but in the end, it's better sometimes to dispatch the birds. And you have to be prepared for that, or have somebody else that you know who can do it for you.
Yep.
Now, the last things that I just want to touch on was what you need to think about to get started. And, the book that's going to come out at the end of the month will have all of this in there. So if you want to hang out for that, hang out for that. But what you need to start thinking about is this. How many chickens do you need? 3 to 5, we estimate is good for a normal size family. If you are an excessively large family, or you have a lot of extended family that you want to trade eggs with,
or you have a big backyard,
then go 5 to 10. But 3 to 5 is generally good.
It's a pretty good number.
If you have a really tiny backyard, think about getting bantams instead of a full size hen, because bantams really don't use a lot of space. They can't tolerate muddy, wet backyards.
No.
So if it's a muddy, wet backyard don't look at bantams. Their feathered feet get yuck. So, but if you have a really small backyard that's dry and you only need, 3 eggs a day tops, then I would go bantam.
Yeah.
They're only small eggs too, so you might need to use 2 for where you would use 1. Basic coop setups. You need a predator-proof, weather-proof house for the chickens to live in.
Yep.
And that has to have a roost, at least one roost, so a pole that they can sit on to get up off the ground, because chickens don't like sleeping on the ground. And it needs to have at least 2 nesting boxes.
Yep.
We've discovered if you only have 1 nesting box in there, everybody fights over that nesting box.
They will fight over it.
So you have to have 2. They'll still fight over 1 nesting box, but have 2. Breeds we're going to talk about next week, so listen in next week and you will know more about that. Daily care that you have to think about: feed, water, collecting eggs. You don't want to leave eggs sitting. And we'll talk more about nutrition in week 3 of February. So, pardon me, we'll go into exactly what you need to be feeding them. The seasonal considerations, which when we talk about breeds next week, you need to think about whether you're in a cold area, and I'm talking for my US friends, an area where it's like 2 feet of snow, by, late autumn. If you're in a cold area, then you need to get birds that are appropriate for a cold area. If you're in a super hot area, then likewise, you need to get birds that will cope with the heat.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that in breeds next week, because there are some birds that do better than others. But at the end of the day, I guess what we're trying to get across to people is that raising chickens for eggs is not as hard as people think it is. It definitely is a cost factor saving. There's definitely a dollar saving attached to it.
Mm.
And we think it's a great way to start homesteading, because it's certainly how we started.
Chooks are good. Yeah, it's what we started with.
Yeah. And I do say, I have a little joke that I say sometimes on the webpage, that homesteading, chicken keeping is the gateway drug to homesteading.
Homesteading.
Because once you start, and chicken math is a real thing, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, we just need 2 chooks and then 4 chooks later. But maybe we should just get 2 more and then you get another 3. And that's chicken math. So chicken math, when you think you've got 3 chickens, you've probably got about 7.
7, yeah.
Yeah. And head counting is hard because they move and, so you just never know how many you've got. And you always need more. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the question is not how many, but where to get the next ones from. Anyway, keep an eye out for everything over the next 4 weeks. Like I say, we're going to be discussing everything about egg layers. And at the end of the month, the book will be coming out. If you haven't already, go and have a look at the step-by-step guide to raising chickens for meat, which is live on Kindle. So on the Kindle app store, we have the book available as an ebook. I'm just in the process of getting the final bits done with the cover. It's so hard with the covers. They've come back to me and said the cover is just a little bit, the lines are out, and so it's not ready for print yet. It's not available as a print copy, but it will be ready as a print copy in the next couple of days. So keep your eyes out for that if you want a print copy of it. As soon as I've got my first print copy, which I'll get as soon as they've cleared everything, once I've got my print copy, I will show you, so you'll stay tuned on the channels for that. And otherwise, we have not gone over an hour, but we've gone pretty damn close. And he's going to finish his travel out. We've got to go and water animals because it is stinking hot here, and everybody is drinking gallons and gallons of water. So we're going to go water them, and we will talk to you all again next week.
I just seen your last comment on there.
What? Read it out.
It says, chickens aren't pets with benefits. They poop breakfast.
Because that's on one of my...
I think that's quite funny.
That's on one of my... So I sell aprons as well, people, on Not the Farmer's Wife store. If you go to Not the Farmer's Wife, www.notthefarmerswife.com, I have a print-on-demand store, or it's a made-to-order store, and one of my aprons says, chickens, the pets that poop breakfast.
Yep.
Which I love. Anyway, that's it for us. We will talk to you all again next week. Bye for now.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. From all of us at Mojo Homestead, we really hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, I ask just one small favour. Please subscribe and leave a review. Reviews help small podcasts like mine be more visible, so more people will know about us and be able to listen in. And don't forget to head over www.mojohomestead.net/launch and check out our freebies. We love helping families start their homesteading journey. Remember, life's too short for store-bought eggs.